At this point, we've gone through a lot of characters for this series, so many beautiful young people. I think it's time to let the old people have a moment in the spotlight. My name is Teddy, and welcome back to my hypothetical Winx Club reboot. It's been a minute since I did a character dive, and I've been missing exploring this world. So I thought it would be the perfect moment to begin our look at the people who help guide the next generation of fairies, witches, and specialists. For this video, we'll be talking about two very interesting women. The backbone and the brains of Alfea. They make sure the most prestigious fairy school in all of Magix lives up to its reputation. Also, feel free to visit my shop for prints, stickers, and commission info. Check out the card in the description for the link, and for my socials and stuff. Okay. Let's start with the backbone. Vice Headmistress Griselda is known for being quite the stickler for the rules. As the embodiment fairy of combat, she knows how crucial it is to have a plan for everything. However, it is just as important to be able to think on your feet and trust those around you to pull through. Griselda is Faragonda's right-hand fairy, and her devotion to her is unwavering and total. She's always been a girl with a strong sense of justice, and had often found herself being sent to the principal's office for disciplinary measures. As she got into her teens, it was easier for her to hold back her fists and rely on taking the proper channels to fight for what's right. When she got her wings, she knew she was gonna do her best to get into her dream college, Alfea, and really tried not to stir up trouble until she was accepted. It was difficult for her to sit by when she felt she had a duty to insert herself in so many just causes. And by the time she finally did make it to Alfea, it wasn't long before she snapped and punched out the first bullies she met. She, of course, had to meet with administration about that. Faragonda was already headmistress at this time, and when she met the young fairy who had been so quick to jump to violence on her campus, she was, of course, endeared by her ferocity and dedication to right and wrong. Griselda felt seen by her headmistress. Finally, someone cared about the reason for her actions, rather than just the action itself. Faragonda knew that Griselda needed to nurture and provide proper outlets for her energy, and with her guidance, she was able to become the girl boss we see today, with a fierce devotion to her headmistress ever since. As of current day, Griselda is around her late 40s, early 50s, about 20 years Faragonda's junior, and seemingly far removed from the rebellious ways of her youth. She is now the one fairies are sent to when they do things like break curfew or cheat on tests, and they would never guess that once upon a time she was in their position herself. One student that has found herself very familiar with the other side of Griselda's desk is our dear Solarian princess. As I've mentioned before, Stella is a year behind the rest of the Winx in her schooling, having failed 2 whole semesters at Alfea before meeting Bloom. So she's actually in the same year as the rest of her friends, but she's a year older. This is despite her starting her fairy training much earlier than the average fairy, having a training staff, and having a personal tutor that she meets with in the library to keep her academics on track. Well, she is at least supposed to meet with her. Even though the other Winx tried to help her keep her grades up, Stella's raging ADHD and issues at home mean, despite actually wanting to do better and make her friends proud, she just can't seem to succeed in her classes. That is where her relationship with Miss Griselda comes in. It starts out with Stella seeing her as an antagonistic force, someone who just wants to spoil all her fun and get her in trouble for whatever she can. Then, as she actually starts to care about being a better fairy alongside her friends, watching as Bloom works not only on her magical studies, but her earthly ones too, she acts out even more to distract herself and pretend that she's okay. Eventually, Griselda starts to pick up on this and becomes more encouraging of Stella in her own way, seeing in her a girl that can't control her impulses and finds her worth in being someone fun. Griselda will provide structure and stability for Stella, things she never really had as a kid with absent parents, and over time, Griselda will become like her unofficial fairy mentor, despite their titles being so different. There's no current fairy of the Shining Sun to take on Stella as an apprentice, so it would be the norm for her to find a mentor with the title of something similar. She has had a few fairy mentors in the past, something very uncommon, but her parents end up dismissing them when it seems their daughter has only regressed in her ability. Perhaps the easygoing nature of most light-based fairies left her feeling lost, or her rank as a princess meant they struggled to assert authority. Either way, she never thrived under their guidance like she would after bonding with Miss Griselda. Another benefit to this duo is that Stella would be getting one-on-one training for combat scenarios. It's not customary for embodiment fairies to learn to fight like guardian fairies do, but as the only one of her friends to not be a guardian fairy, Stella would benefit greatly from these lessons when it comes to the villains that she and the Winx would end up facing. There's more to Griselda's fairy title than just fighting, though. She focuses intensely on form and strategy over brute strength, and there are other important skills for a warrior to have, like camaraderie, discipline, and even learning to practice some medicine. I drew Griselda, and I thought her outfit was fine enough. Gets her office siren vibes and stern, judgmental attitude across, but it was missing something. I decided on giving her this handbag, but in fact, it is no mere accessory. This bag is her access to a pocket dimension, enchanted to function as a portal to her extensive inventory of weapons, armor, first aid, and anything else she may need in an emergency. She takes it with her everywhere, and when teaching her upperclassmen students in advanced combat classes, it comes in very handy. Grizzy's original outfit is very plain, and for the way I'm revamping her character, especially giving her an arc with Stella, I feel like she needs to be someone with a little more fashion sense. My favorite thing about her is the bob. I don't know, I just feel like it fits her. Let this woman give a little bit of Joan of Arc, and I feel like I can imagine her taking secret smoke breaks in hidden spots outside her office because of all the stress the Winx give her. Like, she's very healthy. She meal preps and works out and is absolutely ripped under her outfit, but these girls have her constantly worrying about them, and she just needs a little something to take the edge off, you know? Okay, Headmistress Faragonda. I have complicated feelings about her that I've always found difficult to put into words. Firstly, when I look at Faragonda, I see an amalgamation of several other wise old characters in different works of fiction. Now, to be clear, I don't think they're all necessarily connected to her or that she was copied off of them or anything like that, but it's almost like she sometimes feels less like a character in her own right and more like a means for various tropes to be included within the narrative. The wiki suggests Madame Adelaide Bonfamille from the Aristocats may be a possible inspiration for Faragonda's design, which I think would be honestly pretty hard to disagree with. They're both old white ladies with similar hairstyles and an affinity for purple with puffy sleeves and snatched waistlines, but I also definitely see Cinderella's fairy godmother in her a little bit, maybe for similar reasons like the hair and the purple, but where fairy godmother transformed Cinderella into a princess, Faragonda concealed Bloom's princess status from her. One of her many decisions I find rather questionable, since she knew just how stubborn and ambitious Bloom can be when it comes to finding out her past. Faragonda fills a certain character slot that is common in stories like this, that being the mentor figure or old master, someone our protagonist looks up to for their ability and experience, the person they go to for advice and support, which makes it a bit frustrating for me that she constantly withholds vital information like this from the young girl she's taken under her wing. I've never read Harry Potter or seen the movies, but like, did they do that just because Dumbledore keeps secrets from Harry? He's another principal of a magic school in another dimension, and Harry Potter was insanely popular at the time Winx Club was first airing. I wouldn't be surprised if he was a big inspiration for Faragonda, but does he not have legitimate justifications for keeping certain things from him? I don't know. I feel like the Winx always just end up a lot less prepared for things than they could be, and that there's no real reason other than it's what the script needs to happen. It's weird. I do like Faragonda. I feel like she's unique and interesting in a lot of ways as well. It's nice that in a show where all of the main characters are gorgeous young women, there's an old lady who is very clearly also seen as beautiful. And every now and then she does step up and take actions to protect her students, despite other times being outright neglectful of their safety. She also has an interesting backstory with the whole being a witch thing and her time with the Company of Light. I really would like to keep the witch to fairy conversion as part of her character, since she ends up dual mentoring Murda alongside Tecna, and Murda hid her wings to attend Cloud Tower with Lucy before transferring to Althea. But I'll have to come back to that in a bit for it to make sense, I think. Faragonda shares the same fairy title as Tecna, Guardian Fairy of Althea Library. She is a woman with an insatiable insatiable desire for knowledge, constantly reading and researching and working on her personal theories. At 70 years old, her mind is still as sharp as ever, and just like Tecna, she has a photographic memory. Also like Tecna, she is very fond of her alone time. Faragonda has a very small and tightly knit inner circle. She is incredibly slow to trust, and even once trust is earned, it's unlikely she'll seem any less mysterious. She has never had a deep emotional investment in her students like her vice headmistress, which is illustrated by the fact that Griselda allows them to call her by her first name, while only a handful of people even know Faragonda's first name. I wanted to depict Faragonda in a way that shows how seriously she takes her position as head of Althea, but also how very comfortable she is with it. She's the kind of woman whose presence is felt within the walls of Althea even when she's not around, which is most of the time. For her everyday look, I gave her a wide, sturdy stance, but her expression is still calm and mindful, demure even. She's very tall, I imagine somewhere around Gwendolyn Christie's height, and her outfit incorporates vertical lines and heels, further emphasizing that trait. I kept a lot of her palette similar to the original, as I usually try to do. The main color in her outfit here is indigo, representing the mystery that envelops her. She also wears lavender and pink, very traditionally feminine colors as the head of an all-girls school and a very powerful woman. I feel like this outfit captures the combination of sophistication and complacency that I'm going for with this character, and I like how simple it is while also being somewhat unique, which I think will contrast well with how majestic her fairy form ended up. Despite her disconnect from the young women under her care, she's been running Althea for decades. Everything is so methodical, so efficient, that at this point she hardly ever has to even leave her study. That is, until Bloom arrives on campus. Faragonda found the idea of an Earthborn fairy arriving on Magix fascinating. She was one of the few aware of the Earth Relocation Coalition's exodus from their homeworlds, though by this point in time it had been widely disregarded by many as legend. The idea that this new student could be descended from a line of stray fairies was very compelling, so Faragonda was more than happy to invest her time in tracking Bloom's progress. What an interesting case study she would be. When Professor Avalon, Bloom's history teacher, approached Faragonda with the conclusions he'd drawn after tutoring the young fairy for several weeks, she was able to grasp the true nature of Bloom's heritage. While it was clear that Avalon had come to truly care about his student, with her viewing him as a parental figure while she was so far from home, Faragonda's relationship with Bloom was quite different. After discovering that the lost princess of the fallen kingdom of Domino was standing before her, Faragonda began to see Bloom as something of a living artifact. Her position as Bloom's pseudo-mentor became less about nurturing her abilities and more about studying her connections to a time long past. As a result of this accidental dehumanization, Faragonda grew more and more willing to lie and manipulate her student, leading to Bloom becoming more and more desperate to uncover answers herself, a growing lack of self-preservation that Faragonda was blind to as she became ever more engulfed in her studies. It isn't until Bloom is kidnapped by Darkar and the Tricks that Faragonda is able to see through the thrill of investigation and understand the severity of her actions. She's not an uncaring woman, and deeply regrets allowing herself to spiral so far into her fixation with Bloom's past that she no longer saw Bloom herself. Despite her shortcomings, Faragonda does care about her students, in her own way. She's always been an attentive and supportive mentor to Tecna, and considers her to be the only family she has left. Eventually, she will come to feel similarly about Murda, though she's much less independent than Tecna was, and requires a very different approach to teaching. Faragonda is a powerful fairy. She's accomplished and intelligent, and the students of Althea hold her in incredibly high regard, seeing her as one of the most brilliant fairies in the world. However, she is far from perfect. And this is something she knows herself to be true. Knowledge is useless if it is not passed on, and Faragonda has to realize that in the decades she spent as headmistress, she may have lost sight of what it means to guide the next generation of fairies. This guilt is one she shares with Griffin, the director of Cloud Tower, a powerful witch that Faragonda once held dear. After falling out years ago, their personal rivalry began to fester amongst their students until it became something ugly, and the witches and fairies of their two schools considered themselves to be natural enemies of a sort. As we've come to see, allowing such resentment to be fostered within the walls of Cloud Tower would be an error they would sorely regret. Years ago, when Faragonda was the age to attend Alfea herself, she'd already spent years studying her magic, and knew that her powers were connected to her mind. The more she trained her brain, the stronger her magic would grow. However, she felt that fairy magic would be too easy for her. Too simple. She wanted to learn from the people who did things the hard way. Witches don't have the innate internal source of magic that fairies do. They must draw their power from connecting deeply with the world around them. Surely there was much to be learned from studying an alternate practice of magic than what she was used to. And so, Faragonda hid her wings and attended Cloud Tower, where she not only made great magical discoveries, but discovered some things about herself too. I'll talk more about their relationship in Griffin's redesign, but basically, they were close. Very close. Exclusively close. They never quite gave what they had a label, as Faragonda knew she held too many secrets to let herself settle down. Her ambitions came first. And as much as she cared about Griffin, she just couldn't bring herself to fully let down her walls, and eventually Griffin had to move on for her own good. After becoming headmistress, Faragonda ever advanced her school's reputation as the most prestigious fairy college in the world, and soon went on to join the Company of Light, a highly exclusive, secretive organization comprised of magic's most powerful individuals, shrouded in mystery and guarded from the eyes of the public. This is where she would become acquainted with the deep, dark secrets of her planet's history, things the company has worked for generations to strike from the minds of the public in the hopes that the world could finally heal from such devastation. If they were unaware of what they'd lost, they wouldn't need to mourn. I redid this fairy form so many times. I think when I decided to give her one for this video, I didn't realize just how intimidating the idea of designing my first Enchantix of this rewrite would be. I still wanted to capture her academic sensibilities somehow and make her form both suitable for her as a 70-year-old librarian slash headmistress slash secret society member, but not lose the grandiosity of Enchantix. Since it's the only advanced fairy form in this world, there aren't really any strict design rules for what I want Enchantix forms to be, and I'm kind of just going by vibes, you know? It isn't as though one would need to be able to tell apart a bunch of different advanced fairy form designs by aesthetics. It just needs to be visibly more than Magic Winx or Charmix. But also, it needs to feel like you're looking at a fairy. And while the other designs I had for Faragonda's fairy form felt pretty in line with her character, they didn't feel fairy. I don't know. I really like the end result at least. I changed her pose to feel more welcoming and to better show off her boa, which was inspired by the robe she wears when she flies into the night in her pajamas during the Nightmare Monsters episode in season 1. It's the only alternate outfit we get for her until season 3, so I wanted to reference it somehow, but I felt like a whole robe was too much since I really like the drapey ruffles on her dress. And, you know, in that Winx Club way, sometimes they forget to color in the robe, so in some shots it does look like a feather boa. She has the classic Enchantix sparkle gloves from the show in her shade of pink, but her main color for this outfit is purple. I know Faragonda is already associated with it, but I really like it for her fairy form because it ties her to Tecna, who is also known to wear purple. That's also why I decided to give her green wings. In my world, wings are part of a fairy's anatomy, and so the way they end up looking depends on your genetics. Faragonda doesn't have any blood relatives left, but she considers Tecna to be family, so I thought it would be sweet to give them the same color wings. And boy did I have fun with the wings. I'm going for a stained glass kind of feeling and cranking up the detail to include more veining and embellishments. Instead of going for a multicolored thing like the show, I'm keeping them monochromatic to have a fairy's wing color feel more tied to them, in a way, and to showcase those details and textures that they gain in their advanced form. I wasn't sure if I was going to add the pendants that are on the original Enchantix wings because I love the idea of fairies actually using their wings to fly, and I feel like having all those little baubles would kind of be annoying as they flap, but eventually I decided they were just too pretty and iconic to not have. So I guess just imagine like As a fairy gains their Enchantix form, they stop fluttering their wings quickly like Tinkerbell and instead move them slow like Queen Clarion. Or maybe not at all. Nah, I feel like that's lame. Anyways, yeah, that's my version of Griselda and Faragonda. It took a lot of brainstorming to finally get these ladies in the state I envisioned for them, but I think I'm satisfied with where they ended up. It felt good to finally give a face to such important characters in the story of the Winx Club who definitely don't get enough appreciation when it comes to fan art and stuff, I think. And I am very excited to get to take a look at the rest of the Company of Light and the teachers of Althea. If you enjoyed these character profiles, definitely check out the rest of my Winx rewrites. There's, a lot of them now, and I promise they get better after the first handful of them. I was very nervous and bad at editing when I started this project. You can buy me a Ko-fi using the link in my card, as well as check out what's available in my shop and follow me on Instagram and Tumblr. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope to see you next time. Bye! Leave a comment down below if you're excited about this toxic old woman situationship. I know I am.